Hi all, and welcome to your introduction to Excel's Power Query. This will get you ready for the introduction to Power BI, and we're going to use an exercise based on 4 years of stats from the Chase. You've been provided with a starter file, and we want to transform the data to extract meaningful analysis. I know this sounds obvious, but we so often just jump straight into the data sets without actually understanding what's called domain knowledge, i.e. what the data is about. So it's a quiz show running for some time, and it works like this. Round 1 is a cash builder round. So each contestant tries to answer as many questions as possible from Bradley Welsh, with each correct answer being worth 1,000. Then they have a personal chase against the quizzer, the experts at Pub Quizzer. And if they win, their prize money is into the kitty. If not, they lose. And then the final chase, after all 4 contestants have had their personal chase, whoever's left has a final round. So today's exercise, we want to identify the most and least successful chaser based on the supplied data set. But that's currently what it looks like. We need to do a little bit of work on this before we can make sense of it. The columns showing all 4 chases, we've got text and number in the same column, and then that one at the end, we've got all sorts of different bits of data in there. So we need to transform it, but we said we want to find the most and least successful chaser. But what does that mean? Is it the one who gave away the least amount of money, won the most or least amount of games, or who beat the contestants in the most or least amount of time? To be honest, any of them work. But whenever we're approaching any data science problem, identifying your KPIs is a huge part of the planning. Make sure your starter file is saved in your OneDrive. Remember, if it's in OneDrive, you just can't lose it. And then open the starter file. Important, please use the installed version, i.e. downloaded version of Excel. Works on a PC or a Mac. If it does open in the online version, this is a nice wee trick. Along to the right, go to Editing, Open in Desktop. It will still be saved in your OneDrive, but you can use the installed version. Now just select a single cell within that range. Excel will recognise the range and then select Data in the ribbon. We've got a lot of different options in here. In this case, just the one data set, so choose From Table Range. You'll get a little confirmation that it's selected the same, the right data. If you're happy with that, press OK. And the Power Query Editor will launch. It looks a wee bit like that. You've got all the different columns and so on in there, and this is where we're going to transform the data. I always work back from the end. What is it I need to do to get to my results? We've got all these different possible ways of approaching this problem, but we're going to concentrate on option 1. The chaser who gave away the least or most amount of money. We're going to do some transformation to make the data usable, but I'll show you a few other tricks as we go through. You'll see column air date has been formatted as date time. It's automatically added this timestamp at the end, whereas date would be more sense. So just right click on the column header, and from those options, change date time to date. It's also useful to split up the contestants. So right click on that column and go down to split column by delimiter. Delimiter is just the thing, the element that we want to split by. And quite often Excel guesses correctly, in this case it has. And we also want to split on each occurrence of the delimiter. Press OK. And your contestants column will be split into 4. As I said here, it does usually make sense to rename, but in this case, contestant 1, 2, etc. makes perfect sense. Now we want to know how much is in the price kitty, the contribution. But currently it's a mix of data in there. We've got brackets, plus signs, money, and so on. So we need to split this up before we can make sense of it. So right click, split by delimiter, this time the plus sign and each occurrence. And now you've got your contributions split into 4 columns. Again, no need to rename in this one, because the names given make perfect sense. We want to be able to change the data type to number. But currently it's saved as text, as it says as soon as you see numbers left aligned, it's always saved as text. If you right click and change to currency, you'll get a few errors. But now we need to activate the better computer than the one you're working on. That one. We know that the brackets have come from where the contestants haven't won anything. So, in other words, they didn't contribute anything into the kitty. So we know the brackets actually represent a 0. So right click and this time replace errors. It's very important, not remove errors. If you remove errors, it will take away the entire row of data, and we don't want that. So replace errors, and we're going to replace errors with a 0. Press OK. That column is now cleaned up. Repeat those steps for contributions 2, 3 and 4. Currently we're working within the Power Query Editor. It's a sort of standalone application within Excel. So on the Home tab, go back along to the left, close and load, and then that will apply our changes back to Excel. But then if we want to relaunch it, go to Query and then Edit. If Edit and Query doesn't show in the ribbon, it's because you're not inside the data set. Make sure you've selected one of the cells in the data set, and then you'll be able to relaunch the Power Query Editor. Make a mistake, we all do that, not a problem. All the steps you ever apply to this data set are on the right hand side, but it's vital, if you want to change a step, you go from the bottom up. Quite often the steps are dependent on the ones underneath or whatever, so if you want to change one, remove them from the bottom up and then reapply your steps. We need to fix this FC result column. We've got final score, the time the chaser might have won by, but it's a mess at the moment. So we have to split these two separate elements up. First, split by delimiter and choose custom left-hand bracket. Then rename your first new column to full-time score. Split full-time score by delimiter, this time choose slash, and we've now got full-time, 2 columns rather, of full-time score, 1 chaser score, 1 contestant score. Get this one working again. Have a look at row 4. We can deduce that the contestants won that round, so we now know that full-time score 1 refers to the contestant score. So rename those two score columns appropriately as per slide. Full-time score contestant and full-time score chaser. Final column has either the time or the number of winners and the amount they won by. For us to work out how much was lost, we need to multiply the number of winners by the amount each of them won. So we're going to have 2 final columns, number of winners and individual winnings. So for our purposes, in this case, we can disregard the time element. So firstly, split the column by delimiter and this time choose X. And in that column there, we just want to be left with the number of winners. So if we change type to whole number, the remaining data is going to show as errors, and we can sort that. We know the errors are actually when the contestants haven't won. So if you go replace errors and replace with null, it'll empty the errors out. You'll see the little red bar at the top disappears as well. That means you haven't got any errors within that column. And then rename that column to number of winners. The final column should just have the individual winnings. But before we can update that to currency, let's get rid of that final bracket. Go replace values and replace closing bracket with nothing. We're basically saying take that bracket, throw it away. Update to currency and rename that column individual winnings. I know that's quite time consuming, but dirty data in, dirty results out. It really makes sense to tidy your data up. Not going to push your maths too much, but to work out the total amount won is the number of winners times individual winnings. So we're going to create a new column to do that. From the ribbon, add column, choose custom column, and in that pop-up, rename to total winnings. Then using that formula builder, multiply number of winners by individual winnings. Remember, multiply is the asterisk. And then press OK. Now we want to split the total winnings by the respective chaser. Remember, although we're talking about winnings, as far as the chaser is concerned, that's what they lost. So we're going to create a conditional column to extract, firstly, Mark's losses from the total winnings column. Add column, and this time choose conditional column and rename to Mark's losses. We need to tell Excel which column to look in for the condition. We're looking in the column called Chaser for Mark Labette. But because that column's saved as text, we can search within it. We don't have to say equals Mark Labette. We can say contains Mark. Capital on M. If you put a lowercase m, it will say there's none there. Very handy trick this, just for searching through strings of data and so on. So, Chaser name contains Mark, and then on the output, we can say either specific value or the value from a column. In this case, choose column, and the output should be total winnings. Let me explain this a little bit more. We've looked in the column Chaser for all the rows that contain Mark, and then based on that condition, we've outputted total winnings, which are in fact Mark's losses. Still with me? Okay, 3 further columns, repeat for Anne's losses, Paul's losses, and Sean's losses. Close and apply, and your changes back to Excel. You now have 4 columns detailing how much each chaser has given away. Now we want to summarise all this. You'll see your Excel, you've got a blank sheet called Chase Summary, and we're going to summarise and visualise all the analysis we've just done. In A2, enter an equal sign and then click A2 in your marked losses column. We want to drag the data through to our summary sheet. It's called 3D referencing, and this is where we're referencing cells on a different sheet. It's just not just time saving. If your data in the original sheet updates, so does your summary. Now we want to fill in the other 3. Click in A2, mark, and drag along to the right using your fill handle. The little black cross when you hover over the bottom right hand corner. Now either double click bottom right hand corner of Sean's losses or drag down. Your entire table is now filled out. Now the little summary table. We want total and average losses per chaser. But as with before, we'll work out mark and then just drag across. But we've thought ahead, or I have. Plan the summary table so it matches your original data. That way, as we fill in mark, we can just drag across for the other 3. So in G2 for Mark's losses, enter equals sum, open your bracket and put your cursor in A2. We want to select the whole of the column from A2 to the bottom of the table. You'll see when you click on A2, these dancing ants tell you which range is selected, but we want to go right to the bottom. With your cursor, you need to hold on the keyboard, Control Shift, and then press down. It will stop right to the bottom of the table. Press Enter to complete the formula. This is a very, very handy way of selecting full columns of data, particularly in really, really big tables. It also stops at first blank, so you can check for blanks within your data set. That's Mark's total. Now in G3, work out Mark's average equals average, go to A2, Control Shift down, press Enter. You now got a total and average for Mark. Select G2 and G3, hover over the bottom right hand corner until you get your fill handle back again, and just drag along to the right. And Anne, Paul and Sean should also fill in. Careful you don't take the marks losses heading, it's just the total and average, otherwise marks losses heading will change to all the others as well. So now we've got our little summary table. Let's visualize these results in a chart. Select any single cell. Again, you don't have to select the whole summary table. Go to Insert in the ribbon, and then all the charts are there in the middle. Don't do this. It doesn't make sense to have just a normal column chart because our totals are obviously massively more than the averages, so you can't really read the averages. In this case, what we're going to do is have what's called a combo chart, or combination chart. You'll find them in the ribbon just above, and there are different versions of them. You can hover over it, it gives you a little preview. What we want is that middle one there. That way we've got what's called a secondary vertical axis on the right hand side there. So the average, instead of being this tiny little value at the bottom, we can actually see exactly what the average is. So obviously update the chart title, I've moved the legend to the top and so on, but now we can see at a glance the totals and the averages. These secondary axes really useful to use. Hugely powerful Excel Power Query Editor just for going into dirty data, cleaning it up and making sense of it. We've only just scratched the surface here, but hopefully it was helpful. Power Query Editor in the back end of Power BI is identical to Excel's, but your charts and dashboards will just go up to the next level. And at the risk of sounding like a salesman, we've got the free Introduction to Power BI course on YouTube. The link's just coming up. And it's also one of the ones where you get a certificate of completion having worked through. Be really grateful if you filled out the feedback form. Let us know how you got on with that. All right, thanks very much.